So I think that, it's tempting, first of all, to just want to get started when we talk about trying to develop a new AI solution. And when we want to jump straight in, we kind of often make two really big mistakes that I will hope to convince you are mistakes and that you should not try to do them. First of all, some people connect directly to their production data. This is a big mistake for several reasons that Will has already mentioned. You can't manipulate your production data in order to establish what if scenarios. And part of your process needs to be testing for expected results. You should be able to, in your AI solution, expect a particular result, set up the conditions that should cause that result to happen, and then see what happens and evaluate that outcome. You can't do this with production data. So first of all, get your data out of production and put it somewhere that you can actually manipulate and play with it. Additionally, if your AI is at all trying to make any sort of manipulation to that data, if it is attempting to record anything, if it's attempting to log information, anything like this, production is kind of a non-starter. So let's take our data out of production and put it somewhere where we can actually do development, a development environment. But once it gets there, we're not done, right? We have to make sure that that data is secure and that the sensitive stuff like this PII information or like GDPR-related information, this has to be secured in a way that is not going to leak. And the example that I wanted to give related to this is we had a client who came to us because they had been working with an offshore development team to build their D365 landscape. And they gave that development team copies of their production database in order to do their development and testing. This is a standard thing. Most companies need to be able to do this. The developers need access to that data. But the data was not anonymized. It was not masked. It was not at all obfuscated. And a malicious actor saw that development company, the offshore team, as being a particularly vulnerable attack surface. And they hacked them and they gained access to their data through that company. And they used the data that they were able to glean out of their ERP system in order to spear phishing, to perform a spear phishing campaign and socially engineer members of the internal staff in order to convince them to install ransomware and to make payments to unapproved and unauthorized vendors. Uh, this is the kind of scenario that we need to absolutely avoid. And I know that it costs a little bit of time and money in order to get everything set up in order to prevent this, but it's really worth it because the one time that this happens to you, it can be disastrous.
Yeah, it's the, you know, there's this concept in economics called prospect theory where we often overweight events that are less likely to happen, but underweight events that are more likely to happen. Like most people are worried about, dying on a plane when it crashes, but they won't wash their hands. And I feel like this is very similar where most people aren't checking their P's and Q's and really, taking a responsible approach to this, and they're opening up vulnerabilities that will be exploited, without the proper discourse. So obviously this comes with common scenarios. What are people needing to look out for, Stephen?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, look, this is it's not a problem until it's a problem, and then it's a really big problem, right? And we
Yeah.
definitely don't want to end up in a situation where, especially if you're regulated by some government entity, where you could be facing severe legal consequences as a result of not securing your data. But there's a lot of different ways that that data could be failed to be secured. One of the ways that we commonly see is people using unsecure locations to store backups long term. So you want to treat essentially every copy of your data as being highly sensitive, right? If you have, for example, a location on your network that is storing backups, that location needs to be secured. It needs to be the case that a small, limited group of people have access to that location. You should know exactly who has access to it, and when. It should not be the kind of thing that every person in your organization can just reach out to and access. The next thing that can potentially cause this kind of leak, we've already talked about a little bit. This is just copying data from production into another environment without first obfuscating or masking any of that data. That can expose very sensitive information to people who don't explicitly need it. You should treat your data as being on a need to know basis. Individuals who need access to the unperturbed data should be using that data for some production process and not for development. If you can get away with using some anonymized version of your data for your development process, you should attempt to do so.